This took place about a year ago, and I still haven't talked much about it. I won't tell my friends. Hell, even my family hasn't heard about it. I know they'll say it was because I didn't get enough sleep, that I was stressed and just seeing things, but I know what I saw. I know what I heard. I worked at a military hospital near the edge of a war zone during the night shifts. Most of the cases we got were from injuries like burns and shrapnel cuts and amputations. I got used to seeing things that would scare most people. That's how the field of medical care is. After some point, you just work like a machine to meet the needs of your responsibility. It was a quiet night until 11:50 p.m. when a new patient came into the emergency room. Someone who wasn't a soldier, no name or dog tags. Although his body was severely injured, I remembered his face the most. The left side was completely torn apart, leaving burned skin, teeth, and no eye. He looked like he had been hit by a blast. When they wheeled him in, his body was still shaking. He was crying and yelling. He was making only sounds, not words. I can't describe the pain. After stabilizing him, we sent him to room 206 for overnight observation. Due to a shortage of staff, they instructed me to remain in the room with him and ensure his safety until morning. I wasn't that tired, honestly. I'd had worse shifts. I put a chair next to the bed, checked his vital signs, and turned down the lights. His sobs were still soft and hoarse. It was like he wasn't even strong enough to scream anymore. I told him over and over,
"You're safe. You're no longer in the field. Everything will be fine."
He didn't answer, just kept crying in a voice that slowly faded into moaning. He finally stopped sometime after 1 a.m. I thought he fell asleep and I can take a short nap. I looked at him. He was lying still with half of his face turned toward the window where the moonlight was coming in. His chest was going up and down. I closed my eyes in relief and eventually drifted off. I don't recall how long I slept, but a sudden feeling woke me up from my slumber. I felt like someone was looking right at me. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the man sitting up on his bed and watching me. I'm not easily scared, but the way he looked at me that time sent a shiver down my spine. I saw the clock. It was 3:30 in the morning. In the moonlight, his face looked 10 times more horrible. The eye he still had was wide open. In a shaking voice, I asked,
"Did you need something?"
He smiled at me, a dry, broken smile. He then took a deep breath and replied, "All my pain is gone now." His voice sounded cold and raspy, but he spoke in a tone that felt like a huge weight had been taken off his shoulders. I could feel my hands getting numb hearing him speak. I tried to keep my voice steady as I stuttered.
"Okay, that's excellent. But you should lie down. I'm going to call the doctor."
When I got up to reach for the phone, he laughed. It began slowly. The noise got louder, more twisted and wrong. The laugh sounded like it came from a person within a person. My heart was racing as I stumbled backward and ran out of the room. I thought the patient was going into some kind of shock. I ran down the hall and found Dr. Kareem, the on-call doctor. He came back with me. He asked me how much sleep I had and said I looked pale the whole time. When we got to the room and turned on the lights, the soldier was on the bed, flat out, not moving. His mouth and eyes were wide open. With a stethoscope on his chest, Dr. Kareem checked his vital signs and took his pulse. But then he looked at me with a strange face. "Naomi, this guy's been dead for almost 2 hours." I turned my gaze back to the patient who was lying on the bed and was taken aback by what I heard. I was feeling sick. I said in a whisper,
"But I talked to him. He got up. He gave me a smile. Doctor, he laughed. He said he wasn't in pain anymore. I swear to God."
But Dr. Kareem watched me like I'm some delusional grandmother ranting utter nonsense. "Naomi, you've been working too much. How about you take some time off? I'll inform the morgue to care of the body." And just like that, he walked away. I stood there, looking at the dead patient in front of me for a few more minutes, then went back home without saying anything more to anyone at the hospital. All the way, I kept arguing with myself on whether it was a bad dream or grim reality. I know what I saw, though. That man returned, smiled, and said those words to me, even only for a moment. I was told to take a week off. Yes, I did. After that night, though, I never went back to room 206, not even to look at it. Afterward, I looked at the hospital records. No one was able to find him. No name, nothing. No one came to claim the body. 3 days later, they buried him in an unmarked grave near the military base. I sometimes wonder if I was the last person he saw while he was living, or the first person who saw him when he was someone else. I don't know if anyone out there faced something similar after losing a loved one, but if you did, let me tell you, I understand your pain, and that's why I've decided to share my story at IMR Scary Tales. I'm Mira, and I live in a small town near a forest, the kind of place where smoke from the woods always fills the air, and old women still put salt lines on their windowsills to keep evil spirits away. The kind of place where people pray for the safe return of their sons, and sometimes never stop. My husband, Arav, was a soldier. Arav was a strong and kind man who would take in stray dogs and become emotional during patriotic songs. We were married less than a year when he was deployed. I remember the last morning I saw him, his uniform perfectly ironed, his boots polished, and his nervous smile hiding something he didn't want me to see. I got the telegram 8 months later. It came at dusk. A man in uniform stood outside my cottage, his face unreadable. He didn't need to say anything. I saw the folded paper in his hand and immediately crumpled to the ground. My knees gave out before he said a word. "We regret to inform you." I didn't hear the rest. My mind went blank. They say I fainted. Kavya, my sister, said she found me on the floor, cold and barely breathing. She spent the rest of the night putting me to bed, giving me warm water by spoon, and brushing my hair like I was a kid again. Though I was awake, I felt nothing. That numbness that wraps around your bones and makes you think it'll never go away. I felt only that. I remember hearing the clock that night. I remember going to bed without listening to my husband's voice. The house was too quiet for me. I finally went to sleep after midnight. At around 2:30 a.m., I heard Arav calling my name. It was so soft and gentle that I dismissed it as the wind, but then again, I heard it. It was clearly his. I sprang up in bed. The window next to me was open, and the wind was making the curtains flap. For a brief moment, it felt like a dream. I took a deep breath. Then it happened again. "Mira, come here." It was his voice echoing in the night, like he was calling me from the edge of the trees. I should have screamed. I should have shut the window and crawled back into bed. But my grief spoke louder than reason. If there was even a sliver of a chance. I wrapped a shawl around me and stepped out into the night barefoot. The grass was cold and damp. The moon lit the path between our home and the forest in pale silver. Everything else was still. Not even the insects chirped. My feet led me forward, pulled by that voice. It was always just ahead, deeper and deeper into the woods. I should have known something was wrong when I noticed the silence. No rustling animals, no birds, just a stillness that felt staged. That's when I saw him. A figure standing a few meters ahead, just beyond a cluster of tall trees. He was facing away, motionless, but I recognized the shape instantly. The cut of his uniform, the slope of his shoulders, the way he held his arms just slightly bent at the elbow, like Arav always did when he was deep in thought. My heart nearly stopped.
Arav, where are you?
I whispered. He didn't answer, didn't move. I stepped closer, whispering his name again, tears welling in my eyes. Slowly, he turned, and I felt something in me break. It was him, and at the same time, it wasn't. Half of his face was rotten. The skin slacked like wet fabric, exposing his cheekbone. His eyes were gone, only a pair of empty sockets glistening under the moonlight. Yet he looked straight at me with a kind of pain I can't explain. He appeared to be attempting to express something, yet he couldn't recall how. His mouth opened, twitching. Sound came out, but no words, just gurgling gasps, like he was trying to breathe through whatever took his life. And then he smiled. His smile was small, crooked, and bone-chilling, causing every hair on my body to stand up. I screamed so loudly that my throat turned raw and everything became blurry. The next thing I remember, it was morning. An old lumberjack named Suresh found me near the forest's edge. I was lying beside a thorn bush, unconscious. The brambles ripped my nightgown, leaving my feet scratched and bleeding. Everyone said I must have sleepwalked, that my mind had snapped under grief, but I remember every second of what I saw. My sister brought a doctor. He checked me, said I was physically unharmed, but warned Kavya that I was in a trauma-induced fugue state. He advised Kavya that I needed rest. My mind was filling in the blanks, but here's the thing. No one told him about the voice, or the man in the trees, or the smile. And yet, the first thing he asked was, "Did you dream about your husband calling to you?" That's when I knew something deeper was at work. No one ever recovered Arav's body. The army said the explosion left nothing behind, but something did return that night. Since that night, I never went back into the forest, not even near the tree line. But every year, on the night I got the telegram, I leave a plate of warm food on a flat stone at the edge of the trees. Chapati, dal, and water, just like I used to make for my husband when he came home. And every year, the plate is empty by sunrise. There are no animal tracks visible, no crumbs. There was only a faint impression of a boot print on the soil. I don't care if you think I'm crazy. I know what I saw. I know whose voice called me, and I know he's still out there. This took place on our 8th grade field trip last year. Our school planned this fun and educational trip to a military history museum a few towns over. The museum was built on the spot of a real war battlefield from many years ago. I remember being disinterested in the whole thing, but my friend George and I thought we wouldn't have to go to school that day, but we had no idea it would turn out to be the scariest thing we've ever done. The museum was just another boring place to walk through. There were dusty glass cases with rusted rifles, uniforms behind glass, black and white pictures of soldiers, and the history teacher talking on and on. But sometime in the second hour, George and I saw something strange. A big picture on the far wall that looked a lot more modern than the others. In the text below, it said, "Back Cave, Site of Enemy Entombment." The picture showed the rough, dark mouth of a cave with a written signboard, "Entry not allowed." Our teacher brought it up in passing, saying that during the war, enemy troops had hidden in that cave. It looks like troops on our side locked the door and filled it with poison gas. They all choked to death.
Why would they even keep a cave like that open? Let's go see it. Dude, don't be dumb. It says no entry.
As per the photograph, it seemed like the cave was just rocks and old air, but the inside was pitch black, and the scratched stone near the entry drew me in. I gave George a push.
Let's sneak off. No one will notice.
After 10 minutes, we snuck out the side door while everyone else was watching a dull program about World War I. The cave was behind the museum. It was a long, overgrown road. In the end, we saw it. There was a huge sign stuck on a tree that said in all caps, "Restricted Zone, Entry Prohibited." A long metal chain was wrapped around 2 rocks in front of the cave entrance, as if to keep people from going inside. But there were no guards or CCTV around, and the chain was barely blocking our way. We crossed it over. It should not have been that cold in the cave. When we walked inside, the air felt different, like when you walk into a basement after a storm. There was this wet, heavy feeling around. George kept saying that we should go back, but I told him we'd take a quick look, probably 5 to 10 minutes. We turned on the flashlights on our phones and went further. The walls were damp and had moss growing on them. We saw old broken wooden boxes, what looked like old worn-out boots, and, I swear, real bones. We weren't sure whether the bones belonged to animals or humans. Suddenly, George pointed at the nearest wall. "Look, over there!" The walls had deep scratches on them. The scratches resembled claw marks created in a state of desperation and pain. Some of them even had old human nails stuck in the stone. Right at that moment, being in that cave felt like a bad idea. My mind kept hinting that we shouldn't be here. George and I exchanged a nervous glance, and we both turned around to leave. We must have taken a step or two when George grabbed my hand tight and whispered, "What was that?" I heard it too. A sloppy, mushy sound of chewing coming from a close distance. With shaking flashlights, we slowly turned in the direction of the noise. There was a person squatting in the corner of the cave about 30 feet away. He had no shoes and wore these torn-out military trousers, revealing his bare body. There were bones protruding from its pale skin, which looked as though it had been melted in certain areas, like he had walked through fire, which made his skin melt. It had something in its mouth. It must have been a bird or a rat, but whatever it was, he was chewing on it, and we could hear the blood and flesh of the animal being crushed by his teeth. We were still in fear. Slowly, the man turned towards us. There was no human quality to the creature's face. Both of its eyes were hazy, and one of them was nearly gone. The jaw became excessively loose. He reminded me of the movie Resident Evil. He stared at us for some time, then gulped the lump of flesh hanging from his mouth. All I remember after that was George screaming and running. I didn't wait either. I just bolted out of the cave. Behind us, I could make out its snarls and gag reflexes as it dragged its limb across the cave floor, as if it were gasping for air. We ran until we saw light. We sped out of the cave, past the chain, and into the sun without even pausing to breathe. George passed out. I gasped and fell to my knees. As soon as we got back to the museum, we were soaked in sweat. Obviously, no one believed us. The teachers yelled at us for going there. The museum workers informed us that we had frightened ourselves in the dark, as they had cleared the cave many years ago. It's impossible for anyone to survive in there after the gas attack, but George and I are sure of what we saw. However, George and I developed our own theory. What if someone actually survived the attack? Hours of struggle and searching for a way out made him somewhat adaptive to the poisonous air. Maybe he didn't die from the effects, but suffered a more horrible fate. He might have changed into something else, something that only appears to be a human. Since then, I've been afraid to stay in the dark. Even at night, when I wake up in my bed and my eyes casually travel to the dark corners, I swear I see him sitting there and smiling.